Shalom, shalom. This week's Parsha is Parshat Vayeitzei. I want to take a little time to look at Rachel and tell you something that I personally have learned from this story. It's a very difficult story. We feel bad for Rachel and Leah for different reasons. Um, Yaakov wanted to marry Rachel. He loved her, and he made a deal to work 7 years. And then Lavan tricked him and gave Leah, which of course we feel bad for Leah. We were told when in the describing Rachel and Leah that her eyes were soft from all the crying she did. She thought she was going to have to marry Esav, and then she has to take her husband through trickery. So we feel bad for her, everything she's endured till she's gotten to this point, all the pain and agony, thinking she has to marry somebody who was evil. And then finally she marries somebody else. But is this the way you really want to marry your husband? And we feel bad for her. And we feel bad for Rachel because she was also tricked. And then, of course, Yaakov works another 7 years for Rachel. But what happens is Leah, God blesses her and she's able to conceive. And she has 7 children before Rachel even has a child. And each child must have been increasingly painful for Rachel. And even the 2 maidservants had 2 children, one of which Rachel thought she'd be built through her. But she wanted her own children to come from her. And this was very, very painful that she had gone to Yaakov and she said, "Give me children, if not, I'm dead." Yaakov goes to her, "Am I in the place of God?" He answered her shortly. And I think there's so much to learn from this story. It's really hard to boil down in a short time, but I just want to say this. We see with Leah, and we feel bad for Leah because we're told that she was crying and all of her years for having to marry Esav. And we're told that only Rachel, she's beautiful, her face is beautiful, she's beautiful in form. And we kind of feel like Rachel got all this great qualities and poor Leah had to suffer from this. But when in the end of the day, sometimes it looks that somebody has it all and the other person you feel really, really bad for. But sometimes the person who has seemingly less, and she had misfortune of maybe having to marry Esav, but all those years she spent in crying and in so doing, connecting to God through prayer. And she developed a very strong relationship with God. And she obviously, there's a lot of introspection that goes into prayer. She worked on herself, she connected with herself with God. And this was very helpful for her in her growth. And in her growth, also allowing her to achieve the goals that she wanted to. And then she was able to marry Yaakov and have all these children. Now Rachel, who's always was so beautiful and so loved by everybody, she didn't have these difficulties, and she didn't have all that life to have to really. Not that she didn't believe in God and connect with God, but I think she had a different outlook, because we see through the story, and even in the end, when Yaakov wants to leave and he consults both Rachel and Leah, they answer as one person. They both show that they have faith in God. And of course Rachel had belief in God and faith in God, but it's just not the same as somebody who goes through pain in so many years of learning how to pray and introspect and really connect. And we see that. I think that's why Yaakov got annoyed. He's like, "Why are you coming to me?" Because I think he saw this disparity, this distinction between her and Leah and how to go about things. But I think that Rachel's perception is, if God wants me to have something she's always had in life, God will give it to me, which that's always used to be my way of thinking. Like, why should I pray for something? If it's meant to be, it's meant to be, and God will give it to me. And I think that the pasuk is telling us this, because it doesn't appear that Rachel prayed for her children, because then it says when she finally does get pregnant, it says God remembered her. It wasn't through something she proactively did. It was just God's master plan that she should have these children, and God remembered her, and finally in its time she did have these children, as opposed to Leah, where you see when she's naming her children, she invokes God all the time. God saw that I this and named Reuven. God heard and named him Shimon, and I will now thank God. It was God, God, God. You can see that she really connected, and that through these prayers, she and her connection with God, she believed that these children came. And I think that Rachel had this kind of faith that if something's meant to be, it'll be. And I don't think that that's to say that she didn't have a faith in God. God forbid. But the power of prayer is something that's so important. And sometimes, if we're doing prayer in the right way, meaning we're trying to connect with God in our inner self and understand and know and do all that, we can hasten whatever blessings it is we want to hasten, because things happen quicker when you are really connected, when you understand, you acknowledge that everything comes from God. You acknowledge your pain, you acknowledge why it's hurting you. In that prayer, you talk out a lot, and a lot of things become clearer. And then when they become clear, you can work on yourself, you can change, things are different, and it just changes the whole course of events. Prayer has this unbelievable power and can really hasten blessing. And I think, my perspective used to be like, why should I pray for something? Either it's God's will I have it, or God doesn't want me to have it. And why would praying make it any different? And I think that I've learned through all of the Tanakh, and I see so many things that really happen, and happen sometimes faster because of people's prayer. It has a power that we can't even begin to imagine. And we should always, always pray and always connect with God, and anything that pains us, to talk to God and to work it out. And God willing, God should answer those prayers. We should become better, stronger individuals, and hopefully be blessed through that. But never underestimate the power of prayer. I think it's most important. And my advice to you, as I'm a changed person, and I see so many things that God's blessed me with, and I feel they've come through my prayers, and I'm forever grateful for that and having that ability to connect. And I hope you all will connect too, and may God answer all of your prayers. Shabbat Shalom.